So Ukraine just attacked into Russia again, talking armored vehicles and infantry, and it's crazy that 3 years into this war, this is still happening. The fact that there's anywhere along this border that is so unsecure that Ukrainian military vehicles can cross the border, to include mine-clearing equipment, move these dragon's teeth out of the way, drop off infantry, and they can take over a portion of Russian territory, even if temporarily. Like, that's wild, but it's what happened just a few hours ago. Now, most of the information today is coming from the Russian side, of course, saying, nobody panic, everything is under control. We actually knew this was coming, so we'll get to that in a second. But I want to start with the sole Ukrainian source I've come across so far. The Kyiv Insider says, quote, Ukrainian forces have made further progress in Russia's Kursk region, continuing their offensive near the border, with Ukrainian troops advancing towards the villages of Tetkino and Novi Put, with confirmed fighting in those areas. This operation, which began in August, aims to create a buffer zone to prevent Russian cross-border attacks and disrupt their military activities. And with that, I want to pull up a map to show you an idea of what we're talking about today. So all of Ukraine here on Suryak map, public resource will be linked below. This area here, the Kursk, and actually Belgorod, we'll get into that in a second, but this is the area we're going to be focused on. I'll zoom in first to give you an idea, a point of reference. This area here was where the last fighting took place as Russia pushed Ukraine out of that territory once and for all a couple weeks ago. Following that, Russia actually moved into Ukrainian territory and created a buffer zone of their own right there, if you will. The area we're talking about today is over here a little further west, Tetkino. Now, zooming in here, this is an area west of this water crossing, the Seam River, that Ukraine still holds to this day. Not really much of a Russian presence on that side. However, Russia did say earlier today that Ukraine is massing troops in this Otruba region right here. No indications that there's going to be a water crossing, but nonetheless putting resources there. So this is Tetkino, and what we're hearing today, and we'll run through a couple different accounts, is that there may have been a reconnaissance group, Ukrainian reconnaissance group, that pushed up from the south here towards the railroad in the southern portion of the city. And the footage that we have appears to be coming from this side over here on the east, with Ukrainian armored vehicles and mine-clearing equipment kind of pushing through some of the dragon's teeth, breaching the border and moving in towards Tetkino. We should mention as well that down here a little further southeast in the Belgorod region, there's still fighting ongoing here. A couple weeks ago, Ukraine pushed in around Popovka, Demidovka, and Gravovka over here, and they're still there. So they're still holding Russian territory. It's not a lot. It's not populated centers, but they are still on Russian territory today. Now, moving back over to the reports that we have, starting with Rybar, Russian media, they say Ukrainian formations have again attacked the positions of the Russian armed forces in the Glushkovo district. A small group of the enemy was spotted in the vicinity of the Tetkino railway station on the southern outskirts of the village. As a result of a brief skirmish, the members of the Ukrainian formations withdrew to their initial positions. And what it sounds like right now, between the footage and the different accounts here that are kind of mixed coming from Russia, is it sounds like armored vehicles moving through, dropping off infantry, and then moving back. So if there is a foothold established, maybe they'll get some armored support coming up at the line of contact. This is very similar to what we saw in Belgorod a couple weeks ago. They say, according to our information, the armed forces of Ukraine launched an offensive from the east with the support of light and heavy armored vehicles, but as of 11 a.m., no breakthrough of the defensive lines has been recorded. Russian troops are firing on identified enemy positions, including several destroyed engineering vehicles. At the same time, the activity of the Ukrainian formations is also observed on the northern flank on the opposite bank of the same river in Tetkino. The armed forces of Ukraine have concentrated manpower and equipment in the village of Otruba, but no attempts to cross the water obstacle have so far been observed. Now, one of the considerations here, when we go back to the map, is the idea that Ukraine is just trying to isolate this pocket to try to kind of cut off this area. You can see that it's a bit of a bulge in terms of Russian territory pushing out here into Ukraine. So it's not the craziest thing in the world that if they were able to sever this relatively small patch of land to this road, and then you've got the river crossing in the west, that maybe they could kind of cut this off, and it might be easier to hold than, say, Kursk, where they just pushed in kind of across a broad front. That's one of the arguments right now. We'll see if that actually carries out. Another big one here that we'll get into in a moment is this is probably being viewed as a bit of a spoiler on Putin's Victory Day parade set to take place in 4 days on May 9th. Turning over to some other Russian sources here, military informant said, quote, "Let us recall that this morning the enemy attempted to break through the border and fighting is still ongoing. The enemy's tactics remain unchanged. Engineering vehicles are sent ahead of the main forces to clear the area of mines and demolish barriers, after which armored vehicles with infantry and ATVs enter the border. Ukrainian engineering equipment was damaged in the Tetkino area of Kursk Oblast by FPV drone strikes on fiber optics. The fiber optic drones in Kursk have been substantial. We've seen a lot of those employed by Russia in recent months. Again, there's some confusion here. Maybe it's mincing words. And we saw this during Ukraine's offensive in the south back in 2023, where was it the first line of contact? Was it the second line? How far had Ukraine breached? And I'm seeing something similar here, where Ukraine is definitely operating inside of Russian territory, but it doesn't look like Russia is referring to the actual border as their line of defense. There's something set back a little ways from that. Z Control here says, quote, the Ukrainian Armed Forces obstacle clearance vehicle made a passage through the Dragon's Teeth and drove back despite multiple hits, landing troops, so dropping off infantry. A firefight is underway on the line with the Dragon's Teeth. Our artillery, FPV, and airdrops are working on the enemy. The people are all combat ready. There is enough ammunition. There is no reason to panic. The Ukrainians have no equipment yet. It's kind of a running joke that anytime something happens, the Russians say there's no reason to panic. And sometimes, like, they said there was no reason to panic when Kharkiv fell in 2022 and like that entire front collapsed. It was no reason to panic. Everything is under control. So no matter what, it's always kind of interesting to see that thrown in the Russian assessments. Now, one of the big questions here, of course, is how on earth did Russia not see this coming? Like, there's already been fighting in and around the Kursk region. We've seen that Ukraine pulled their forces back from inside of Kursk, but there's no indications that they were necessarily redeployed elsewhere across the country. Is Russia just not watching the border anymore? Like, what happened here? No worries. Two Major says, actually, we saw it. Quote, the enemy's plans were known, and their concentration sites were destroyed at night. Look, based off the footage that even Russia is releasing right now, it's hard to say that the Ukrainian formations were destroyed at night. Multiple Russian sources are saying that the fighting is very much still ongoing. He says, taking advantage of the rainy weather, the Ukrainian armed forces are clearing the way, trying to prepare a breakthrough east of Tetkino. Mine-clearing vehicles continue to make passages in minefields in the Dragon's Teeth line in order to throw armored vehicles with troops in there. So it's still very, very early in this operation, to the point where we could still end up just calling this a raid, and Ukraine could pull out later today, and that's that. So I wouldn't spend too much time trying to attribute exactly why Ukraine is carrying this out or what the goals of this operation might be. The most prevalent explanation that I've seen so far is, again, trying to throw a little rain on Putin's Victory Day parade that's coming up here in a couple days. Just kind of a reminder that as they're celebrating in Moscow, Ukraine still has the ability to push into Russian territory at will. Now, shifting over to some Victory Day updates. Again, here we are, 3 years into the war, and not only do we have Ukrainian forces pushing into Kursk in military vehicles, we have President Zelensky having to put out a statement saying that he cannot guarantee the safety of visitors in Moscow. I'm sure that's a good look. Putin loves seeing that one, right? Now, there's been a lot of misinformation about this. I want to address that first. There was what appears to be incorrect quote circulating, getting a lot of attention the last couple days. Quote, Vladimir Putin will be present at the parade on Victory Square via video communication, citing Reuters. So, Putin's like, yeah, I'll be there on the big screen. I'm not going to risk being down on that platform with the possibility of Ukrainian drones hitting the parade. There's no evidence that Reuters reported this, that Putin said this, that any announcements like this came out of Russia at all. In fact, the most recent that I've seen today is that Putin 100% will be there in person. So just, unfortunately, that one caught fire, got a lot of attention. What is not misinformation is that it does look like some other world leaders have decided, you know what, maybe I'm going to sit this one out. Or, they're reporting health scares in the last couple of days. The Serbian president and the Slovak prime minister have both said, actually, I was going to go. Looks like a fun time. Can't make it. Health issues randomly popped up. So we'll see. Nonetheless, there's been a lot of talk recently about the possibility of Ukraine conducting a strike against Moscow while this parade is ongoing. And there's a couple of reasons why they might want to do that. It's these massive formations of military personnel and equipment. It makes for a pretty tempting target. It's also a big display, right? This is Russia's big day, one of their biggest days of the year, showcasing their military capabilities, their military history, right? Everything's on display for the world to see. If something starts going boom, it makes Putin and Russia look bad. They can't even control their own country, a parade. They can't ensure the safety of their people during this time of celebration. You can see that argument. I don't think it's realistic. And the reason I say that is not because the capabilities aren't there. Ukraine certainly has the capabilities to conduct strikes in or beyond Moscow, depending on the protection level of air defense. But I don't think it's in Ukraine's best interest, and there are actually some other targets that are probably more viable. It's not in their best interest because the off chance that you actually hurt or kill a foreign dignitary does not bode well. And Russia can use a drone simply flying in the vicinity of Moscow. Russia will immediately say, look at that. Ukraine is trying to kill the leaders of all these foreign countries. It's just a PR. It just sets Ukraine up for a major PR loss. There's no value there. The value is outweighed negatively, in my opinion. But nonetheless, Zelensky has had to put out a statement saying that he can't guarantee the safety of the people attending this parade coming from around the world. Quote, our position is very simple for all countries traveling to Russia on May 9th. We cannot be held responsible for what happens on the territory of the Russian Federation. They provide you with security. Therefore, we won't give you any guarantees because we don't know what Russia will do these days. And he also warned that Russia could try to orchestrate provocations, including arson, bombings, and so on, to, quote, only blame us, or Ukraine. Now, it's interesting looking at the statement, again, because this is being made 3 years into this war. I doubt when this kicked off back in 2022 that Putin or very many Russians at all thought 3 years later at their Victory Day parade, there would be real concerns about Ukraine hitting it with drones. Probably wasn't on the radar one bit, no pun intended. Now, Zelensky's correct here. Like he cannot guarantee the safety of anybody on foreign, like what are you doing, right? It's a different country. They're under the protection of the Russian people. If something happens there, it's not Zelensky's fault. Of course, this is kind of interpreted to mean that, yeah, there could be some drones. Who knows? But he is correct in saying this is up to Russia to defend you. Why are you looking to me to offer your protection while you're in their territory? Now, Dmitry Medvedev, former prime minister of Russia, not super happy about all this. He said in the event of a real provocation on Victory Day, nobody will be able to guarantee that Kyiv will live to see May 10th. So, kind of a pretty overt threat there. Guess Russia doesn't want to see this parade disrupted. Almost forgot. We got to throw this in here. So Russia apparently is doing like this full Reichstag storming reenactment thing. These World War II reenactments are absolutely getting out of control. So this is a video that Russia released. I guess this is going to be part of the May 9th celebration. Full like 2-scale Reichstag, Nazi Reichstag from World War II. This kind of, one of the key areas that kind of wrapped up the end of the Battle of Berlin, the end of Nazi Germany. It's a major part of world history, a major part of Soviet history. So I guess they've got this on display as well. That'll be kind of interesting to actually see how that one plays out. Now, there have been rumors right now, and that's all it is. So the post I have up here on the screen is an unconfirmed report. Take that for what it is. But it makes sense that a lot of air defense assets have been moved in and around Moscow in anticipation of this parade. It just passes the common sense test, and it's probably not something we would get public reporting on either way. We'll probably start seeing some photos get leaked in the near term showing some air defense assets on rooftops in and around Moscow. Haven't seen those yet. But if you're trying to protect this parade and the major threat is drones, of course, there's going to be additional assets moved in that area. Air defense and electronic warfare is a finite asset for any military, and certainly for Russia right now. So if they have 100 units of something and they want to move more near Moscow, that means they have fewer units to protect other areas of the front. As a finite resource, that means that there are going to be multiple areas. Maybe it's in Crimea, maybe it's in this, who knows where these locations could be, but Russia is likely having to reallocate resources to further protect Moscow, which would open up areas, maybe airfields, maybe ammo supply points, port facilities, who knows. Opens up other targets that may have been harder for Ukraine to hit today, yesterday, or last month. And on or about May 9th, they're going to be a little bit softer. So when I'm talking about I don't think that Ukraine will, or should, maybe is a better way to put it, go after the May 9th parade, it's because they can probably achieve better results going after a multitude of Russian targets scattered all across the front. Again, air defense assets being moved from one location, free up and lighten the protection in other areas. So that's probably what I'd keep an eye on. But nonetheless, again, pretty big news today. 3 years into this war, and Ukraine is launching an attack into Russian territory up around Kursk. We'll keep an eye on that. And of course, the May 9th parade coming up here in a couple days. But that's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.